Ever get that feeling that there's more going on in the world than what we're told? Today we're diving into a really complex and frankly controversial text from Michael Hoffman called Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare. His whole premise is that history as we know it is basically a giant stage play. So we're going to break down his theory on how that show is run.
Right at the heart of it all is this quote: "There is a joke operating behind the scene flats of history." What Hoffman is getting at here is that the major events we all learn about are just a performance. And behind the curtain, well, there's a recurring prank being pulled on all of humanity. So the big question is, what's the punchline?
Okay, so the first part of this big prank, according to the author, has to do with something we all pretty much take for granted, the idea of progress. He argues that our faith in humanity always getting better and better is actually the central illusion we've been sold. So he frames this as a huge shift in how we see ourselves. You know, the traditional view was that humans are, well, flawed. We have limits, and we just have to deal with them. But the modern view? It promises perfection. It tells us we can overcome anything and everything with enough science, technology, or the right political system. Hoffman says this one change in thinking is the absolute key to understanding the whole psychological operation.
And here, he says, is the punchline. Every single time we've tried to build a perfect society, a utopia, it's backfired, horribly. In his view, that ambition to perfect humanity, that's the very thing that paves the road to our own man-made hell.
All right, so if history is a joke, how is it delivered without anyone catching on? This brings us to the core mechanism he talks about, a strategy he calls the revelation of the method. Now, this is where things get really wild. The theory goes that a hidden ruling class, he calls it the Cryptocracy, doesn't actually hide everything in the dark. No, it's kind of the opposite. They strategically reveal what they're doing right out in the open, but they do it through symbols and carefully staged events.
He lays this out as a kind of four-step playbook. First, they do something out in the open, but it's wrapped up in so much symbolism or buried in a huge news cycle that nobody really gets it. Step 2, because we're confused or just overwhelmed, we don't react. Now here's the kicker. In their rulebook, our silence means yes. It's consent. And that perceived consent is what fuels their power, making the whole system stronger. Our apathy literally becomes their power source.
So you're probably wondering, how can you reveal something while also keeping it a secret? It seems like a contradiction, right? Well, according to the author, it's all done using a special kind of code he calls twilight language.
Think of it like a sophisticated form of doublespeak. It's a language of symbols and words that's designed to send two messages at once. There's the simple, surface message for all of us, and then there's a totally different, often the exact opposite, meaning for those who are in the know.
A perfect example from the text is the five-pointed star. To most of us, it's a sheriff's badge, right? It means law and order. But Hoffman argues that in this twilight language, its hidden, esoteric meaning is all about the star Sirius, a key symbol in Masonic tradition, that he claims signifies allegiance to a hidden, invisible empire.
And that's the whole idea in a nutshell. Everyday symbols are supposedly loaded with secret meanings representing hidden loyalties, all operating right under our noses. According to this author, these symbols are the secret vocabulary of power.
So this leads to the big who question. Who's supposedly behind all of this? The author identifies them using the ancient symbolism of Saturn, calling them the Saturnian architects.
Now, we're not just talking about guys in hard hats here. In this framework, the Saturnian architect is more of a mindset, a force that's completely obsessed with re-engineering reality, with forcing a man-made order onto the natural world. You can see how this links right back to that flawed idea of progress.
The author actually gives this drive a name, the Edifice Complex. He describes it as this compulsive need to build an artificial paradise, a new Garden of Eden. But, the theory goes, every single time they try, they don't get Eden. They get Babylon, a manufactured hell. Part of this process is said to involve symbolically staking the earth, almost like pinning it down to control its natural energy.
Okay, that leads us to the final and maybe the most mind-bending part of this whole theory, the ultimate bet that this so-called cryptocracy is making. It's called the truth or consequences gamble.
I mean, it doesn't really add up, does it? If you're secretly running the show, why would you leave clues lying around?
But the text argues these aren't mistakes or slip-ups. No, revealing the method is a calculated, absolutely necessary, high-stakes part of the whole plan.
So here it is, the ultimate gamble. It is all or nothing. If the public truly gets what's being shown to them, and, this is the crucial part, actually acts on it, the whole system collapses. Game over for the conspirators. But if we see the truth and just do nothing, or if we don't even see it in the first place, our inaction is taken as consent, and that gives them the green light for what the author calls a giant leap forward in their control.
And this brings us to the final, really provocative idea from this work. In today's world, we are just flooded with information. Conspiracy theories are everywhere. But the author leaves us with this chilling question. Does simply knowing about these things do any good at all if we don't act? Or does it just turn into a twisted kind of advertisement for how powerful the people behind the curtain really are?